In this short video, we're going to talk about the process of inflammation, diapedesis, how leukocytes respond to the injury to the tissue. So these are endothelial cells of the blood vessel. And this summary here is the injury. Infection, mechanical damage doesn't really matter. So the injury in the tissue leads to the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines and chemokines into the blood flow. So we're going to mark that this is blood. Cytokines and chemokines through the blood travel all the way to the bone marrow, and that stimulates the process known as leukocytosis, generation of new white blood cells. These white blood cells from the bone marrow enter the circulation, and in the circulation, that white blood cell here, okay, neutrophil right here, okay, that white blood cell in the circulation can recognize so-called adhesion molecules. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this cytokines for now. So what stimulates adhesion molecules on the surface of the endothelial cells? Well, it turns out that the cytokines and chemokines actually stimulate the production of adhesion molecules. So white blood cell, after the leukocytosis, which is the first step of a white blood cell activation, initially it starts to roll, okay, and then eventually it firmly adheres, kind of flattens. It adheres to the surface of the endothelial cells, and I want to highlight that adhesion is mediated by these adhesion molecules. Adhesion molecules. So after the firm adhesion, white blood cell extravasates. It's called, also this process is called diapedesis. Okay, so extravasation out of the blood vessel. Sometimes they go back, that's intravasation, but in our case, of course, we are mostly interested in the extravasation. So they extravasate, they end up in the tissue, and white blood cell in the tissue will migrate towards the site of injury, and that migration will be mediated by the gradient, chemical gradient of chemokines and cytokines, and the process of migration is called positive chemotaxis. So that's the general overview of the process of white blood cells' response to the tissue injury. As we have just discussed, tissue injury leads to the induction of cytokines and chemokines, pro-inflammatory molecules. These chemicals lead not only to the migration of white blood cells, but also to the vasodilation. And you can imagine local vasodilation. You can imagine that local vasodilation will lead to hyperemia, which is increased blood flow, and therefore redness of the inflamed tissue. Cytokines also increase vascular permeability, which means not only white blood cells can cross the vascular barrier, can cross the vascular wall easier, it also means that more plasma can leak into the tissue, and we'll talk about plasma leakage, but plasma leakage leads to edema, swelling. Edema by itself, swelling by itself, may lead to pain, okay, and cytokines may lead to pain as well. Also, cytokines increase local cellular metabolism, which leads to local, and I want to highlight local fever. Okay, warmth in the tissue. I actually want to replace fever with warmth. So here you have 4 main signs of inflammation: redness or rubor, warmth or color, edema, tumor, and pain, dolor. The 5th obvious sign of inflammation is the loss of function. Now, why edema is so important? So, when plasma goes into the tissue, it works basically by washing away pathogens and cellular debris and dead cells directly into the lymphatic system. Also, clotting factors and fibrin that are found in plasma will form fibrin threads that will essentially hold the microorganisms in place, preventing them from migrating further in the body.